For 1,000 years, no army on Earth could breach these walls. 44 separate forces tried. 44 times they failed. Then a 21-year-old arrived, and in 53 days, he ended a 1,000-year empire. Welcome to Historiophage. We examine moments where human willpower collided with the impossible. Constantinople was the crown jewel of the Byzantine Empire. It sat at the junction of the world's major trade routes, home to 500,000 people, protected by a geography that discouraged conquerors for centuries. Its primary defense was the Theodosian walls. Built in 1413 AD, these were not a single barrier, but a triple-layered engineering system, 18 feet thick and 40 feet tall, reinforced by a moat and 96 towers. For 10 centuries, the city served as a physical boundary for military ambition. It was the place where the expansion of empires stopped. In 1432, a boy named Muhammad was born into the Ottoman royal family. He grew up memorizing an 800-year-old prophecy that promised a wonderful commander would one day take the city. While peers studied statecraft, he focused on becoming that specific commander. When he took the throne in age 19, the Byzantine Emperor Constantine XI dismissed him as an inexperienced teenager. He assumed the Ottoman threat had neutralized itself through a weak succession. Muhammad, however, had spent his adolescence mastering 6 languages and the tactical history of every previous failed siege. He knew the layout of the walls before he ever saw them. On the day he became Sultan, his first priority was not establishing a court. It was commissioning the production of industrial-scale cannons. Muhammad recognized that a millennium of failure stemmed from a single tactical error, trying to go over the walls. He decided the only way forward was to go through them. He sought out Urban, a Hungarian engineer who had been rejected by the Byzantines. Muhammad provided him with unlimited funding to design a weapon that could turn stone fortifications into rubble. The resulting bombard cannon was 27 feet long and fired 1,200-pound stone projectiles. It required 60 oxen and 400 men to move, and its report was so loud it could be heard 14 miles away. By April 6, 1453, Muhammad had surrounded the city's 7,000 defenders with 80,000 soldiers and 69 cannons. The age of the medieval siege had ended. Industrial engineering had rendered 1,000 years of masonry obsolete. For 6 weeks, the bombardment continued. Each night, the defenders used wood and earth to fill the gaps the cannons created during the day. Despite the scale of the Ottoman fire, the Byzantines held their positions. Muhammad's navy was stopped at the mouth of the Golden Horn by a massive iron chain. Every previous commander in history had accepted this as a fixed logistical limit. On the night of April 22, Muhammad ordered 72 ships to be hauled out of the water. He used thousands of men and oxen to pull the entire fleet over a 200-foot hill on greased wooden rollers. By morning, the ships were lowered into the harbor behind the chain. The defenders woke to find an Ottoman fleet in a location they believed to be physically unreachable. Muhammad's victory relied on a refusal to accept the geographical boundaries his predecessors considered final. By late May, the defenses were at their breaking point. Starvation and exhaustion had set in, and the European kingdoms had ignored the emperor's pleas for help. On May 28, Constantine XI attended the final mass in the Hagia Sophia. He set aside his imperial markers, donned the armor of a common soldier, and took his position on the crumbling walls. At dawn, the assault began. During the chaos, a small gate called the Kerkoporta was left unlocked. Ottoman soldiers surged through, and the 1,000-year line of the Caesars finally collapsed. Constantine died in the fighting, and the 21-year-old Sultan rode into the city that had resisted his ancestors for centuries. The Roman legacy, which had survived in the East for 10 centuries, was finished. Upon entering the city, Muhammad dismounted and poured a handful of dust over his head as an act of humility. He immediately ordered that the Hagia Sophia be protected, and that no Christian place of worship be damaged by his troops. He reinstated the Greek Orthodox Patriarch and permitted the city's various religious communities to continue their traditions. Muhammad chose to integrate the city's existing institutions into his empire rather than dismantling them. The fall of the city triggered a movement of scholars and manuscripts toward Italy, providing the intellectual fuel for the Renaissance. With the Silk Road now under Ottoman control, European powers were forced to look for new routes to the east. This necessity led directly to the voyages of Columbus and Vasco da Gama. The shift in global trade and the expansion of European exploration can be traced back to the moment the walls of Constantinople were breached. Muhammad Al-Fatih spent the next 30 years building infrastructure and centers of science. He even provided sanctuary to Jewish refugees fleeing persecution in Europe. He lived to see the prophecy of his childhood fulfilled through a specific combination of engineering and unconventional logistics. Every advisor he had told him the city was unconquerable. They cited 1,000 years of precedent as proof. At 21, with no previous command experience, he looked at that same history and concluded that no one had yet tried to change the methods of the assault. Muhammad Al-Fatih did not just break a wall. He demonstrated that historical precedents are only valid until someone decides to innovate past them. Subscribe to Historiophage for more chapters from the stories that built our world.